Okay, so today we're going to talk about problem solving really with multiplication and division. Now what's really important about this is that in the Common Core, in the math PDF on page 88 and 89, there are the storytelling charts, and there's the multiplication chart that's on page 89. There are really 9 different types of problems that they want you to know how to do with your kids. In 3rd grade, it's really the first 2 rows, and there's 6 problems, and then in 4th and 5th grade, they pick up that last row. So look up those charts. Also look in the Common Core State Standards math progressions, which you can find on the Arizona site. If you just Google math progressions, it'll come up. And read the 3rd grade operations and algebraic thinking progression, and it will talk about the story problems as well. But basically, the first kind of story problem is equal groups. And so this is when you say, oh, there were 3 kids and they each had, 2 candies. How many candies did each how many candies did they have all together? And so that's an equal groups problem, right? You've groups of something, an equal groups problem. The next one is you say, Farmer John planted, 3 rows of vegetables, and he planted 3 plants in each row. How many vegetables did he plant? That becomes an array problem. So the Common Core distinguishes between an equal group problem and an array problem. You want your kids to know how to solve both, and you want your kids to recognize, oh, that's an equal group problem, oh, that's an array problem. A lot of this research comes out of cognitively guided instruction, which is some great work done by kind of Carpenter and Company. They had a really good book out about cognitively guided instruction. There's tons of stuff on it and about it on the internet, and on my blog as well, there's tons of links. But basically what the Common Core has done is taken that fundamental research and made it the standard that all kids should know how to think about this. What the research says is that if kids can kind of categorize problems, then they have an into solving them. They have a conceptual framework. Oh, that's an equal group problem, or oh, that's an array problem. The research actually says teachers should name the type of problems that kids are working with, and that requires that we know the type of problems and that we name them, and that kids can name them. Not just that they're recognizing names or whatever, they're sprouting out names, but really that they conceptually understand what they're doing. So those are the 2 kinds of problems that you want your 3rd graders to know in terms of multiplication. Now, with division, it gets a little bit more complicated. You're working with partitive and quotative division, so you're looking for the group size unknown, or you're looking for the number of groups unknown. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So one is, say you have 12 items, and you're going to partition them into 3 groups. You have 4 in each group. So here's an example. You say, oh, there's 12 oranges, and there's 3 bags. Okay, so we say there's 3 bags. And we want to know how many oranges can go in each bag. We want to know the group size. So when you're first teaching kids, you teach them, you put 1 in each bag, and you share them out. And so now you get to find out what the group size. And so we see that the group size is 4. Right? So that's called a group size unknown problem. We said that there were 12 oranges and there were 3 bags. How many in each group? Now, a different kind of division problem is the quotative, or the number of groups unknown. And that is when we say things like this. We say there are 4 groups and there are 3 in each group, right? There are 12 apples. There's 3 in a bag. How many bags, right? So the number of groups is unknown in this case. How many bags? There's 4 bags. So spend some time yourself thinking about partitive and quotative division, group size unknown, and number of groups unknown. Practice them yourself, work on them in grade level meetings, and make sure that you can name them and that you teach them to your kids and that your kids can name them. All right, so now we're talking about division and in terms of arrays. So group size unknown. If 12 apples are in 3 equal rows, how many are in each row? That's group size unknown. How many is in each group? We know the groups, and we're looking for how many is in each group. Again, I'll repeat the question. If 12 apples are in 3 equal rows, right, how many in each group? Oftentimes in these group size unknown problems, it'll tell you 3 equal groups, 5 equal bags, 6 equal baskets, and so forth. Now, the next kind of problem is the number of groups unknown. So you say things like, if 12 apples, here again we have our 12 apples, there's 4, 8, and here's our 12. We have 12 apples, and they're divided into rows of 4. So we know the group size, right? We know the group size, but we don't know how many rows. So we have 12 apples are divided into rows of 4. How many rows? Right, so we know that there's rows of 4, and what we have to do is see how many rows of 4 we can get out of this. They're divided into rows of 4. 12 apples divided into rows of 4. So we can see the group size, like the number of groups, is unknown here, and then when we actually feel it out, we can see that there are 3 groups. Different from the problem where we knew there were 3 groups and we were looking for how many in each group. In this one, we just know that there's 12 apples. We know how many are in each row, but we don't know how many rows. Okay? So make sure you spend some time doing both partitive and quotative division with your kids. All right, the next critical area, so multiplication and division, huge critical area for 3rd grade. The next critical area for 3rd grade is fractions. You're going to want lots of materials for fractions. The first understanding really for kids is, unit fractions, and they do a little bit of fraction work in 2nd grade, looking at circles and rectangles and so forth, and dividing them into halves and fourths. But in 3rd grade, it becomes its own domain, and so you want children to really understand unit fractions, which have a numerator of 1, and you want them to understand benchmark fractions, a half, 3/4, and so forth. You're going to use a lot of different visual fraction models. So here you can see I drew out some visual fraction models. In the Common Core, kids are supposed to constantly draw out different kinds of models. They're supposed to use the circles and the squares and the rectangles and the strips, and so you could pull all that stuff offline. You can go to Van der Waals stuff and pull that off. You can go to MathATube and pull that off. There's just tons of stuff. I just want to show you the kinds of things that are available. You can pull off fraction circles that already have the fractions in them, or you can pull off blank ones. You can have the kids cut these out and do tons of things, compare them, add them, subtract them, depending on the grade level. But the point is you want to use a lot of different things: squares, circles, strips, and sets. And you also want kids to understand this idea of relative size. That if you say Susie ate a cookie, and a half of a cookie, and George ate a half of a cookie, who ate more? Kids should understand, well, it depends how big the cookie is, right? That this idea that size matters when we're talking about fractions. I could eat a half a cookie, and if it's a small cookie, it's a small amount. I could eat a half a cookie, and if it's a big cookie, it's a big amount, so that those two halves aren't equal, right? One half it depends on the size of the whole. Really important critical area that kids understand that. The next thing you want kids to be able to do is to compare fractions. And so that's really important. It's part of the critical area. And you want to give them lots of opportunities to compare fractions, and they should be able to do that on a number line. Number lines are huge, huge. I cannot stress how huge they are. A fraction is a number that sits on the number line. So you should have number lines up in your classroom, tons of them, in order to teach this critical area. And you can pull off fraction number lines off the internet, and you can draw them and have kids labeled. You benchmark 0, 1, half, and so we're going to compare half. We're going to compare half and a quarter. Where would a quarter lie on here? And here's a pictorial representation. If this is half, this is a quarter would be over here. So you want kids to be able to draw and illustrate their thinking with number lines. Fractions is huge. Students should be able to compare them. And the final thing that students should be able to do is to talk about shapes. Shapes are huge in the Common Core. Students should use lots of different things to talk about them, describe them. They should use pattern blocks, of course. They should use Play-Doh. I'm going to put some Play-Doh out here because I think it's really important. I think we have to bring Play-Doh back. Kids should have to build spheres and cubes, and kids should have to talk about angles and sides. That's a huge part of third grade, talking about angles and sides and being able to talk about the properties of shapes. And finally, measurement is another big area, a critical area, the idea of area and perimeter. You must have grid paper so that your kids can really work with the color tiles, and they can, with the color tiles, or I use mosaics a lot, kids can do different figures and talk about, well, what is the area of this figure and how is it the same or different from the area of this figure, and what is the perimeter. There's a big focus on area, though. They do perimeter, but there is a huge focus on area in third grade. And then you want grid paper so that kids are drawing out, oh, I'm looking for the area of this figure. Oh, I'm looking for the area of this figure, right? And understanding the difference between area and perimeter. You want to spend a lot of time in third grade on area and perimeter. Those are the critical areas for third grade. And if you visit my blog, you'll find lots of activities to teach those critical areas. Thank you.